The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269.
Hot on the heels of locking millions of people out of the electoral process, stripping back the public's right to protest, and robbing millions of workers of their democratic right to strike, Conservative MPs are now seemingly ecstatic that they've managed to pass emergency legislation which, wait for it, disapplies human rights, dispenses with courts and puts into law a barefaced lie, namely that Rwanda is a safe country, even though they all know that to be completely untrue. As Lord Garnier has rightly pointed out, passing a bill to declare Rwanda is a safe country is like passing one saying all dogs are cats. Not only has the UK's highest court unanimously ruled Rwanda is not a safe third country for the government to send asylum seekers. Just take a look at this 2022 report from the US State Department on Rwanda. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment by the government, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, arbitrary detention, political prisoners or detainees, transnational repression against individuals located outside the country, including killings, kidnappings and violence, arbitrary or unlawful interference with privacy, serious restrictions on free expression and media, including threats of violence against journalists, unjustified arrests or prosecutions of journalists, and censorship, serious restrictions on internet freedom, substantial interference with the freedom of peaceful assembly and freedom of association, including overly restrictive laws on the organisation, funding or operation of non-governmental and civil society organisations, serious and unreasonable restrictions on political participation, and serious government restrictions on or harassment of domestic and international human rights organisations. As Labour's Shadow Minister for Creative Industries, Chris Bryan, eloquently explains,
the bill seeks to reverse, by statute law, a finding of fact by the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. It therefore creates a legal fiction. Its title, the Safety of Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill, gives the game away. According to the bill, Rwanda is safe, even if it isn't safe, simply because the government, through the bill, says it's safe. But declaring somewhere safe doesn't make it, of itself, safe. You can no more change reality by law or legal dictate than you can by mere imagination. As Bolingbroke says in Richard II, you cannot cloy the hungry edge of appetite by bare imagination of a feast. And you cannot make Rwanda safe just by saying it.
And now listen to this.
So I am confident, and indeed the conversations that I've had with the government's legal advisors reinforce my belief that the actions that we are taking, whilst novel, whilst very much pushing at the edge of the envelope, are within the framework of international law.
Well, imagine the shock for the Home Secretary when he finds out that whilst an Act of Parliament that breaches international law is still valid domestic law, it will still remain a breach of international law. So being valid domestic law is not an excuse for a government to breach international law. And haven't we heard something like this from Mr. Cleverly before?
The Internal Market Bill breaks international law. That's the discussion that's carrying on at the moment. You're shaking your head.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
I would say to my honourable friend that yes, this does break international law in a very specific and limited way.
And whilst the emergency bill stops short of leaving or disapplying the European Convention on Human Rights in its entirety, the Prime Minister himself has actually admitted it was the Kigali government which stressed the need for the UK's legislation to be compatible with international law. Just think about that. Rwanda is now having to tell the UK government it must observe international law and human rights.